So one thing we would like to do at the start of this class is to remind everyone that by 11:59 p.m. tomorrow, we'd like everyone to reconcile any errors they encountered with their first attempt of the Module 1 assessment. And I just want to say a little bit more about that. It's a lot simpler than most people could imagine. And what we want you to do is to find each item where there's an issue, a problem, a mistake. And we want you to open up a new Word document. And you put the number of the question where there was a mistake. And, let's say it's question number 3, right? And we want you to type each of the letters of each word of the item detail, the question. Now, the reason you want to type this, when you're working with your fingers to type out the letters of each word, I know that seems like a lot of extra work. There's a temptation to copy and paste. But when you type the letters of each word and your eyes are engaged and you have to think about what you're typing, your mind is working in a different way. And this is called a tactile kinesthetic mode. And when you're working in this manner, the detail of that question will stick a lot better in your mind, okay? And then what you do next is type out the words of each correct answer that should have been selected. That's all. No explanation required, right? And as you type the letters of each word, again, your fingers and mind and eyes are working in a different manner with that material, and it sticks. We don't need explanations of why you chose the wrong answers. None of that's necessary. But we would like you to go ahead and finish this. I will post the retake, the next version or final version of the module assessment over the weekend, so that by the middle of next week, you can strike while the trail is hot, so to speak, okay? Now, I have not yet released, I started to open up module 2, but I am revising the content of module 2 because I'd like better clarity and I'd like to include more information. Here's why. We have a new textbook, and the new textbook includes different concepts. And if we're talking about installing and configuring, so what is the main topic of our module? It is OS installation and how to automate support, right? In fact, I think I'm going to say automate support, because support automation sounds, it could mean something different, okay? What we want to do is we want to explore how to automate support for operating system installs, right? How to make it easy. How to give you like a photocopy machine for operating systems, which, believe it or not, you can actually do. In the same way that a photocopy machine will create an exact duplicate, you can do some things, very easy things, to basically roll out dozens or even hundreds of machines all at once when you automate the install methods that we're going to explore. And what you'll notice is that in this new version, so this is a draft of the Module 2 study guide, I've changed the textbook assignment. So I want you to read chapters 2 to 4 of the course textbook. Now, the dinosaur book, written by Silberberg, that's the second reference in our syllabus. That reference is optional, okay? So if you have that, that's great. There may be an additional reading from that textbook, but the primary course textbook is this one right here. mastering Windows Server 2022 with Azure Cloud Services. And that is one thing that we're working into our new material. The fact is, we want you to be able to classify different types of OS installs based on the context and the system or device. And there's information from our previous season in an addendum. And the addendum breaks out install methods based on whether they're client or server or enterprise, right? And what I'm going to do is revise this because in simple terms, people have general notions about how best to classify an operating system installation, including the author of our textbook, right? So you have physical installations on where there's disk media or a USB drive and it's a physical server, but you also have virtual installations in a virtual context. And so what we want to do is take a little bit of time to explore that aspect of virtual systems today. And then we also want to take a closer look at the different types of operating systems. Now, we mentioned firmware in our last module, but many smart connected appliances and mobile devices like smartphones with Android operating system or network systems like your Wi-Fi router, they have firmware, and that's an operating system, right? Personal technology like laptops and PCs and workstations involve the installation of what we would commonly call a client operating system, and large multi-user systems like servers, enterprise systems, and data center infrastructure requires a server OS, right? Now, so what I'd like to do is update our material over the weekend, and I will put this out and then open up module 2 for your review as we start our class on Monday. But I would like your reconciliation to be complete so that you can get the retest, the final attempt of the module 1 assessment down while the first module concepts are solid. And then by that time on Monday afternoon, we can start talking about installation and basic setup. So as you click on this, you might find it's not a, if you look at your Blackboard, you'll notice it's not there yet again. I am updating the learning outcomes and the resources and the assigned activities. And one of the things I'd want to do here is just to walk through some material that we have already talked about before, right? So when you talk about the different features and advantages of Windows Server 2022, it's very extensible, meaning there are lots of different options. So the one server can provide a full range of interests and needs. And these are listed in the first chapter, chapter 1. And so, this tracks with what we were talking about in our first module, right? So you can set up a server as an enterprise domain server. You can set it up as an application or file server, right? You can have file servers, file and storage services. That's what we mean by that. Failover clustering, so we can set up multiple servers if one fails in the other. You can set up network functions like DHCP and DNS. These are roles. One of the most important that we're going to talk about in this class is Hyper-V. Hyper-V is the server role that allows it to host virtual machines. So if you have a system that's larger and you're dealing with massive amount of resources like a data center, then you can install the Hyper-V role, and suddenly it becomes like a virtual box machine on steroids. except that Microsoft doesn't use VirtualBox. They have their own version of a hypervisor. Now, when we talk about understanding virtualization, see, this is where this should be reviews. So if you took a 1-credit course last semester called ACS Tech Virtual Labs, right? Then you learned about virtualization in VirtualBox. If you haven't taken that yet, this information will get you up to speed. And you'll have a chance to understand this fresh, even if you weren't with us in that 1-credit course last semester. Hang on just a moment here. All right, so, whoops, wait a minute. I'd like you to go ahead and read through this so that you understand some basics about virtualization. And the one that we're going to focus on the most happens to do with this server virtualization. So we're going to use a large machine, and we're going to use it for your solution to create, well, it's going to become the platform or environment that you use to install a server operating system. And essentially, it's going to talk about some of these key features. Now, one of the most important one is called automatic virtual machine activation. Now, this is something that's huge, and I just want to explain to you that this may not seem like a really big deal, but if you have a data center edition that's loaded, so deciding which Windows Server version to use, all right? Everybody with me? Hello? Can someone unmute their mic?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you install...
Still here.
Okay, thank you. If you install the Data Center Edition on a large machine, and then you set up virtual machines, right? What will happen is that you can use the same installation media to set up standard servers as virtual machines inside the big data center machine. And the license, the activation license to properly install that and set it up and work with it is included with the data center license. So what are we saying? You can set up a separate standard server operating system on a big machine. And as you can see, it does pretty much everything the data center version does, right? But there are some important differences. And one of the most important differences is this AVMA, Automatic Virtual Machine Activation. So I'd like to show you what this means. It means that you can create any number of standard servers inside a data center machine, and you don't have to worry about using your license code. Now, did we or did we not ask you to submit your data center license and your standard server license as an assignment last module? Yes or no?
Yes. Assignment 2, I think it was. No.
Yes, that's right. What I'd like to do now is show you this. This is, I am connecting remotely to a machine in Charleston, South Carolina, but very soon we're going to have a machine in my office. And one of the coolness factors of this machine is that it's a prototype. It is a prototype of the one that's going in my office, except the one that's going in my office is twice as monstrous, twice as bad, okay? this machine has 128 gigs of RAM. And the processor has 16 physical cores, 32 hyper-threaded cores. It's called an AMD Ryzen Threadripper. The one that we're putting in my office, I have two of them. Each has 24 physical cores for a total of 48 hyper-threaded processors for a grand total of 96 hyper-threaded processors. Each of the machines that are going in my office each have 512 gigs of RAM and very fast Ethernet connections and a smoking graphics card for additional computation capabilities. But the most important thing about this installation is the operating system itself. The operating system itself is 2022 Data Center Edition. And if you look at what this machine does, you'll find out that its primary role is that it's a file server, but it's also, more importantly, it's a host for virtual machines. And that gives me the chance to demonstrate really cool stuff and practice really cool things when it comes to operating system installations and configuration. And I can demonstrate how not to do a thing because, and I'm going to do that in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to do that in just a minute, and I hope you'll get a kick out of it because I want to demonstrate something live instead of just talking about it. Okay. So on this machine, I have a Hyper-V manager. I'm going to right-click this and run this as an administrator. And I actually have some machines that are running right now inside this data center host, a platform, a virtual machine platform. Now, each of these installations are a Server 2019 installation. And you'll see this one machine here, Virgo. Virgo is like a test machine. And if I look at Virgo, Virgo has, let's see, let's make sure Virgo has enough hard drive. Does Virgo has a 60 gig, like a 64 gig hard drive, okay? And it's a general purpose server. And what I'd like to do is demonstrate one of our operational tenets, one of your learning objectives, right? I have revised one of the learning objectives so that it reads this. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Describe and refute. That means common excuses. So when we post this video online, I'm going to say it's going to have a name like in YouTube, it's going to be called Excuses, Bad OS Installs, right? So I'm going to demonstrate why you don't do an in place. And I want you, and I'm going to talk about three specific examples of why it happens, but why it's a really bad idea. Okay. And so we kind of hinted in a previous session that the titans of industry just want you to load the newest one. Just load it. Just get the latest thing on there because they put a lot of security features in there. And many times after they've been hacked, they put out a whole new version of an operating system that's a lot more resilient and it's more secure and it's more stable. So what's not to love? The thing I want you to understand is there's a better way to install a new operating system, and you cannot, must not, never, ever, under any circumstances, tell anyone that it's okay to just upgrade in place. Now, there is one special exception to that, and we're going to cover that special exception. I'm going to explain at the end of this section what's the one case where, okay, you would upgrade in place. And it's so rare. It's like, all right, it might happen once in your lifetime. It has happened once in my lifetime. In 25 years, a quarter of a century of working technology, I've only encountered a single situation where it was like, okay, we don't have any choice. We can actually do this, okay? Now, we have already reviewed in our last class, we said, hey, describe how system access for tech professionals and common users differ. And I don't think, I'd like to revisit that quickly. One thing that professionals are supposed to be able to do is to work from a command line remotely, or work from a command line directly on the system. And regular users have to have a graphical interface. And one of the things that we're going to do in here is teach you the use of both. It's the command line interface that allows for the automation that you need to really multiply your benefit and your knowledge. So even though that's kind of old school, we're going to revisit that and find new ways to work with it. In any case, I want you to know that if you're going to work with operating systems deployment, you will have to know commands and work without a GUI and do that efficiently. And so what we're going to do is crawl, walk, run with the command line interface. We're going to give you some basic things to do and some more complex things to do, and then some terrifyingly automated things to do with a terminal or a PowerShell prompt. And hopefully you'll start to appreciate that. Now, the second student learning objective for this module asks you to classify different types of OS installs based on the context and system or device. And I've put that information in the addendum on purpose. So I'm also revising the Module 2 study guide addendum. We're going to fill in this one live today, right now. I'm going to show you why it's a dumb idea to upgrade in place. And we'll take each one of the excuses one at a time. But we're going to work with our remote system, because seeing is believing. We're going to start up Virgo. Actually, before we start up Virgo, I'm going to go into the settings, and I'm going to put an image file in Virgo. And the image file I'm going to put into the DVD drive. You might notice this kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? You've been in VirtualBox already, right? Has everybody been in VirtualBox?
Not extensively, but yeah.
Yeah, the basics. So you go into settings and you have this listing of devices, and it looks pretty much like the one that's in VirtualBox. The thing is, I want to go ahead and use an image file. And even though this is a 2019 server, I'm going to browse to the ISO folder, and I'm going to select my 2022 disk. And I'm going to hit apply, and then okay. And then I'm going to start this server up, because I want this server 2019 standard edition machine to see, oh boy, we have server 2022. Let's upgrade in place. But before we upgrade in place, I'm going to do some things inside Virgo to demonstrate why. And I think this is the problem. I think most people just accept that, well, if Microsoft has the procedure, then it must be okay, right? And so what we're saying is it's easier, it's quicker, and there are built-in features. So when you load the disk, there are built-in features for an in-place upgrade. And everybody assumes, well, okay, so Microsoft, it's one of the options. It's quicker and easier, you just do it and you're done. And you'll keep all your applications and your data intact, and it'll overwrite any bad stuff on the system. So, you'll have a more stable operating system. Those are the three excuses we're going to take one at a time with a few quick actions to refute, meaning we're going to shoot them full of holes, okay? Has anybody had an old version of software and then they upgrade their operating system and then all of a sudden the old version of the application doesn't really work and you got to load a new version of the operating system?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't really have to explain that one, right? I mean, you've been there and done that. Okay, so you had a chance to install Windows 11 or Windows 10. And what you had before was Windows 8. And you had applications, right? See, if you talk about a clean slate, a lot of people don't want to do that because, well, they don't want to reload the applications. Well, we'll get back to that though. This is the part though that kills me. They just, the folks that want you to move to this new operating system, there's all sorts of reasons why they're pushing people to just click the easy button. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, let's see how easy and how quick and what the built-in features are. Before we kick off that install though, I want to modify that machine so that we'll pretend like, okay, this machine Virgo. Okay, so everybody can see my screen, right?
Yes.
So I have a machine called Virgo, and I'm going to go ahead and log in. And everybody can see that this machine is a part of a domain. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. It means that it's not a standalone server. It's not a work group machine. It belongs to something called a domain. The license is activated, and it's activated because it's a standard server, right? So when I go here and look up the system, it is a standard server, and the license is good because I did this thing. I used AVMA so my main machine is a Data Center 2022 machine, and I installed Standard Server 2019, okay? And I did that and took advantage of the AVMA thing. Which I thought we were just seeing here. Where do we see AVMA? Yeah, so how extensible is Windows Server? Wow, look at all the stuff it can do. These are the older versions. Oh, so here's the server with the GUI, and here's the server without the GUI, what they still call core, right? AVMA. There it is, automatic virtual machine activation. So when I buy a data center edition, it's expensive, but if I can run a dozen standard servers inside that machine I actually save a lot of money because I'm not buying separate standard operating system licenses. I don't know if that makes sense. So here I am inside here. And I'm going to open this up. And I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to select where it says this PC. Yeah, everybody? And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to rename it Virgo because when I log in, I want to know which machine I'm logged in on. In just a minute, you'll see this. In fact, if I close this and then reopen it, now it says Virgo. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to it's easy. And this idea of I get to keep all my applications and data intact. If we open up server 2019, we start to see something. In older versions of Windows, they did not have a straight program files directory. Now, I'm also going to turn this on here. I'm going to view hidden items and file extensions because I want to see the extra directories. So in earlier versions of Windows, whether it was client Windows or it was server Windows, they used to have a directory, and they still do, called Program Files x86. This is 32-bit applications. And over time, they also had a user profile directory that wasn't called users. It was called documents and settings. And so application data could be stored in here, or it could be stored in documents and settings with a user login. As Windows evolved, they added a 64-bit folder for program files, and they called it just plain program files. And then eventually they added a program data folder. Now, as applications are, a new version of an application is released, what will happen is that the people who are creating that software, they update the places where the locations are stored. The point I'm trying to make is, if you have old applications that are used to storing the user data in a folder called documents and settings, and now you're in a new version of the operating system, an in-place upgrade would start to put everything for that user profile in a new folder. But the old application is still looking for it elsewhere. That can create problems. The same is true of the executables. The software application itself, if it's stored in here and then a new version, a 64-bit, if you upgrade the operating system, there are some things that break along the way, meaning, okay, now I have a 64-bit operating system. In order for my 32-bit applications to work, I have to kind of translate 32 to 64 in terms of address space. So I want you to understand that there are some differences with each new version. And the truth is, no, you don't actually get to keep some of your applications or your data. But the other thing I want to tell you is that a lot of times when bad stuff gets on your system, let's pretend that you're out on the internet and you get some bad stuff on your system. It'll store that application, the malware application, in the program files or actually on the C drive itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to embed a directory here called bad app. All right. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that there's an even worse malware app, and it doesn't abide by the rules. It doesn't put a directory in there in program files. It puts it right in the C drive itself. So I'm going to create a directory for that very bad app. right here. And then I'm going to tell you that when you have a login, and I have a login here, it's an administrative account, right? So when I'm in here, I have a user profile. And if you go inside here, you can actually see a folder that's hidden if your view allows for it. It's called app data. Can everybody see this?
The app data?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when people wipe their slate clean for a new machine or they get a brand new machine, they lose like their email box or they lose their contacts or they lose their shortcuts. That user information is stored in here. And a lot of times when people are migrating, if they're wiping the slate clean and they're reloading, they forget to look in the hidden directory where, oh, your contacts and your email program are stored, or your email box itself, or your browser favorites, right? That's in here. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into the local folder and I'm going to put a directory in here that is so bad. I picked it up. It was I went to the Microsoft store, but I was redirected to a hacker site and I installed it off the start menu. And that's where a lot of these apps, not traditional software applications, but just apps are stored. And I'm going to call this, because this is really bad here, okay? Okay? And that's stored in the user profile where an application I've loaded is supposed to only work for me. Have you ever loaded an application and it asks, are you going to use this software for just you or for every user on the system? Has anybody ever seen that? Has anyone ever seen that before?
Sorry, not computer, internet dropped for a second. I missed what you did.
Okay. Has anyone ever experienced when you're installing a new software application, it asks, is it just you that's going to use this, or is every user on your system going to use this?
Yeah,
Have
a
you,
couple times.
have you ever seen that pop up when software loads?
A
Well,
couple times.
yeah. So the point is that if it's only for you and it's a cool app, it's an applet. It's not. A lot of times it'll store that in the user profile, that kind of stuff. Like in Microsoft, right? If I had Outlook in here, you'd see a folder for Outlook, and that's where I'd see the Outlook mailbox. So what happens is that people forget to look in those places, and they say, well, if I do an in-place upgrade, my stuff is going to stay in there. Because I remember once I wiped the slate clean and I reloaded, but then my mailbox wasn't in there. My favorites for my browser weren't in there. And the simple truth is, as long as you know where to go to get them and you save them, you can still wipe the slate clean. The idea that you can keep all your apps, well, if it's an older version and you install a newer operating system, the application has to depend on the newer operating system, and it's not always backwards compatible. So you have to end up reloading a new version of the software. So that means, well, you're not really saving time, are you? You have to load new versions of the application anyway. But I want you to see this one, easier, quicker, and built-in features, right? So yeah, and it'll overwrite any bad stuff on the system. I'm going to kick off the install and then we're going to clear the class because it's not going to finish before the end of our class, but we're going to pick up exactly where we left off when we start our Monday class. And I want you to see, has it overwritten any bad stuff on the system? I want you to see, you know, if you really spend less time getting your system to work right, after it's loaded. And then we're going to check inside those other directories to see if those applications and data are still intact. The thing I want to point out here is the whole point of loading a new software, a new operating system, is to get rid of old bad stuff. But if you install in place as an upgrade, you're going to see that, yeah, you get to keep your applications, but that doesn't mean they actually work. Yeah, you get to keep your data, but if the format for the new operating system or its features work differently, then that could still be a problem. The double whammy also has to do with applications and data. You're going to see when we get back, it didn't overwrite any bad stuff on the system. The really bad things that are in there are still in there. That's what we're going to prove. That's what you'll see. So when you get inside here, you're going to see that. You're going to see that. And you're going to see that. After we put server 2022 on here. So I'll go ahead and kick off this installation right now. And in 60 seconds, you'll see I can just upgrade on top because there's features that are built in to make it easy and quick and simple. And yeah, just remember that quick and easy and simple, install Windows Server. So yes, I want to make the installation better. We'll say next. It's getting updates for the install. See, that's the other wild card. I'm going to choose the in-place upgrade, and it's embedding the updates. So it's going to restart this, and it's going to check the PC, and the product key is in there. So there's a separate product key that I can use for AVMA. It's called an AVMA key. I can put that in. Actually, it's requiring me to see that's grayed out. So did I get to like just update and not worry about the license because I'm updating? Or do I have to dig out the license key now as if it were a brand new install?
The license key like it's brand new.
Yeah. Oh, so it's quick and easy, huh? No, no, it's not so quick. It's not so easy. And you're going to find that there are all sorts of extra hurdles, even if we take the upgrade in place approach and try to install 2022 on top of 2019. All right, let's hit the pause button. We'll pick up the trail on Monday. I want you to see what happens after we do the in-place upgrade. It's pretty eye-opening.